A big hello to all you folks out there. Thank you so much for joining us here on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. This is Nipasa Pradhan, and I'm going to be your host for today. Well, I have this important disclaimer before we start off with today's session, and that is by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. Friends, I'm really thrilled to have all of you join us today across Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And thank you for being here for sure. And feel free to drop your questions in the comments throughout the session because we will definitely take some time out in the end, to answer your questions as well. So your participation is what makes these discussions really engaging and insightful as well. So thank you so much once again. Also, yes, joining us is a distinguished guest, none other than Yvette Bansal, a former US diplomat and the founder of Udeti Visa. With unparalleled expertise in consular processing, visa interview preparation, and deep insights into H-1B, L-1, and F-1 visas, and definitely other categories of visas as well. But Yvette has helped individuals and organizations successfully navigate the complexities of the US visa system. So I think really happy to have none other than Yvette join us today. Thank you so much, Yvette, for joining us once again. Such a great honor to have you with us today.
Thanks. Such an eloquent introduction. I really appreciate that, Nampasa. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And today's topic, friends out there, is how to prep for your H1B and L visa interviews. So, none other than Yvette Bansal, such an expert, is going to help us here with us. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them. We will take them up. And yes, so whether you're gearing up for your first visa interview or just looking to enhance your strategy, you are on the right place today. Thank you for joining us. And I think, Yvette, if you're ready, let's dive right in.
Sure, let's go for it.
All right. So, as the name suggests, how to prep for your H1, H1B, and L visa interviews. I have this first question for you, Yvette, and that is, what are the common questions asked during an H1B and L1 visa interview?
Sure, common questions is who is your petitioner? Who's your client? Is this an internal project? Is this a product? What are your work duties? Please tell me about your education history. How long have you been working for your current client, employer, if you are currently working for them? Where is your office located in the United States? Why do you need to work in the United States for this role? What is your salary? What's your highest level of education? Have you ever been on an F1 visa before? And then some questions about dependents. Those are all pretty common.
Thank you so much, Yvette. And well, that brings me to my next question. How can applicants best prepare for H1B and L1 visa interviews? Any tips, Yvette?
Great. So, having the answers to those common questions, and also I wanted to share some questions that are less common. So, keeping those questions in mind and being prepared to answer your work duties, your work location in a direct way. Also, what is the interview process like? Be sure you're able to explain what the interview process was like for your employer. Or if you are going from a known petitioner to an unknown petitioner, say this is a renewal, the explanation for that should be upfront. Know things about your company. So research things about your company, how many offices they have internationally, how many offices they have in the United States, the turnover of the company, their revenue, their presence, their relationship with the end client. So preparing answers to all these questions is going to help you be the best prepared, having your all your documents in a row. And we're going to talk about documents a little bit more, but knowing, having your LCA, having your employment letter, having any pay stubs or W-2s, having all of those documents organized and ready to present to the consular officer is going to be really great prep for an H-1B or an L visa. And I think the best piece of advice for preparation for for you is if you're going for an H-1B or an L, make sure that you're going with reputable companies. You know what you're getting yourself into. That's going to be the best way for you to avoid administrative processing is if the company that you are going with does not have a bad track record, that's going to be really great. So just even further before you even get to that visa window, doing your due diligence and research and really going for that reputable employer. Right?
Absolutely, Vet, and research is very, very important before you step in. I mean, talk about it when we get into any sort of business or employment. I think we think about the future, and it takes up most of the years of our life, and it's pretty serious. So, it's a big step, and it's always best to do your research properly before you take this big step. Thank you, Yvette, for
Exactly.
that detailed explanation. And I would really like to say a big hello to Pavan Kumar. Thank you for your questions. We are surely going to take them up. Please stay with us. And Yvette, yes, you were saying we would like to talk more about documents and the process clarification. So, what documents are essential for the H-1B and L visa interviews, and how should applicants present them?
Right. So definitely organize your documents. Some consular officers will want to see every I-797 that you've held if you've had previous petitions. If you have past F1 visas, maybe your old passport or a copy of that visa. For the H-1B and L visa interview, you want to have more documents than, say, a B1, B2, or an F visa because that consular officer can really ask you to pull anything. Again, it's not really a paper-based process, so documents are not always looked at, but being prepared will help you avoid administrative processing. For example, if the consular officer is asking you what product that you work on, maybe if you have a one pager on the type of product that you would work on in the United States, that would be great. If you're working for an end client, one of the number one things that the consular officer will want to see is an end client letter. Make sure that letter is pristine, the date is up to date. There's no grammatical issues. Everything that is mentioned on your DS 160 is in alignment with what you're saying. So if you're asked where are the headquarters of this company, that address should match on the letter, for example. So small things like that really matter because the consular officer is looking for any fraud indicators. Having your LCA, having your transcripts, so just really being ready for anything that the consular officer may ask you for. If you were on an L visa or H-1B in the United States before, the consular officer may ask you for your tax returns. They may ask you for your pay stubs just to make sure that you were getting paid what you say that you're going to get paid or that in for the next petition. So all of these are documents that you should have accessible to you and organized.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Yvette, for those great tips. It's very important to be organized, and that's just going to save you a lot of time from various confusions. And thank you so much, Rag, Shraddha, also for participating for your questions. We are going to take them up. Please stay with us. Yvette, this brings me to my next question, which is also about documents. So, during the interview, how closely do officers review supporting documents like employment letters or pay stubs?
I would say if I'm asking for a document at the window, I'm going to closely review it. So you may have a stack of documents that I may never look at. However, if I ask you for that end client letter, I am looking at that end client letter. I'm seeing who it's signed by. I'm looking at the grammar. If I ask you for pay stubs, it's for a reason. I want to see a pattern of pay. I want to see how much you were paid. So if I'm asking you for your LCA, I'm going to check that the documents that I want to look at are in there. So if I'm asking you for documents, I'm going to look closely at them. And obviously, I'm not going to look at all documents though. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. It does. It does. So, friends out there, yes, you can keep commenting as you can see. There'll be a comment section. If you have any questions regarding this topic, how to prepare yourself for an H-1B or an L-1 visa interview. If you have any questions, or maybe you're not feeling as confident, you can ask your questions. I have another question, and this is regarding rejections. So, what are the
Mhm.
most common reasons for H-1B or L-1 visa rejections and revocations? Vet.
The most common reason is some sort of fraud issue for revocations. The end client was not expecting the services of the beneficiary. So, if a petitioner filed on behalf of a beneficiary and we are told at the window that this beneficiary will go to a certain end client, and we do a check on our end and that end client says, no, I'm not expecting this person, that's one of the most common reasons for revocation. Other reasons for revocation is doing background checks and having that company not really operate the way that they have said they were operating in the United States. Maybe they're not doing the product work that they said that they were doing. So most common reasons is issues regarding the petitioner and differences between what the USCIS petition and what the applicant is presenting and some new information that's presented at the visa window. For for rejections, if that individual has some sort of ineligibility, say they misrepresented themselves at some point in the past, that can also be a reason. So they have a credible job, a credible end client, but then they have something in their profile that makes them ineligible for that visa. That could also be a reason why an H-1B or an L visa could be rejected. It's not like other visa categories like the B visa or J or F. You cannot 214B an H-1B or an L-1A or an L-1B. There has to be a substantial reason, some discrepancy that that we uncover during the interview process, and then we actually have to recommend revocation to USCIS. And if we don't have substantial proof, that revocation will not go through. So it's a pretty lengthy and serious process.
Thank you so much, Yvette, for highlighting that for us and for explaining very thoroughly. We have Maya and Abu Ansa also having commented. Just stay with us. We are surely going to take up your question in a bit while, in a short while, really. So, Yvette, I have another question. And if you could tell us, what should a person do if if their application undergoes a 221G administrative processing?
So you can, well, first and foremost, in order to avoid 221G, you should be able to explain your job duties well. You should be able to understand what the company does and be able to articulate it. And those documents that we mentioned and having those concise answers hopefully will help you avoid 221G. Once 221G happens, it could be for various reasons. It could be there is some information that we have on the petitioner, or there are some documents that we want to look more closely at. So, first and foremost, whatever the counselor asks you to submit, please submit as soon as possible and as completely as possible, especially if it's an end client letter that they're looking for. Make sure that you're submitting it as soon as possible. And if it's stuck, there for a long time, you generally have an email address on that 221G document that the consular officer gives you. Don't be afraid if a week passes by and you don't hear back to ping that consulate or embassy and ask them about the status of your case so that it actually moves along. If you're noticing that it's taking months, it probably means that it was sent for further investigation, maybe back to the United States. And in that case, there's really not much you can do, but I would encourage you to still to continue to follow up every so often so that it doesn't get lost and that someone is aware and your case has visibility.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Yvette, for taking that up for us.
Sure.
Well, I think we should go on to our next question. This is about consular specific information. So, do visa interviews differ between consulates as such as Mumbai, Delhi, or Chennai?
One of the biggest differences is that Chennai is the only consulate in India that takes blanket Ls. And
Hmm.
so a blanket petition. So that blanket petition is given to multinational companies with a certain revenue, with a certain status. And it's not an individual petition. So Chennai is the only consulate that takes that on. And here, that consular officer is really going to focus on your duties and responsibility, your subject matter expertise, or your managerial capacity, and really wants to make sure that you meet the qualifications of that specific visa class. Um, and in Mumbai and New Delhi, and also in Chennai, they do obviously individual petitions, which is
Okay.
a little bit more specific. So that those are the major differences, really.
Do you have anything to say? You been in all of these consulates? New Delhi, Chennai, Mumbai.
I have not been in Chennai. I've worked 2.5 years in Delhi and 2 years in Mumbai, and I think it every single I would say that Chennai probably has officers that are seeing a lot of these blanket petitions and a lot of Ls and a lot of H-1Bs, but also New Delhi and Mumbai see a lot as well. So I think all of the consular officers are pretty well versed. I don't think that there is a better place to go. I mean, it's pretty standard.
Definitely. No chances of any other. All right. So, Yvette, moving on, do you have any advice for dependents? What advice would you give, those who are applying for H4 or L2 visas? And are their interview as rigorous as the principal applicants?
So the reason an H4 and L2 would be approved is solely on the basis of the principal beneficiary being approved. So if the H-1B or L-1A or L-1B is approved, generally their dependents is also going to be approved. So here, you just, as a dependent, need to prove your relationship by blood, either the child of or the spouse of the primary beneficiary. So not rigorous, but if you're going for it based on marriage, please have some wedding pictures, especially if your marriage was recent or if you're a child. Birth certificate naming your parent would be good. So those types of documents are going to be looked at to establish their relationship. If an H-1B and an H-4 show up together, they could also face some relationship questions. How did you meet your wife? How long have you guys been together? So don't be surprised if those questions are asked too.
So they can ask anything personal as well.
Yes, they definitely can, and they do.
There you go. Thank you, Ved. And I have one more question to go. If you could tell us how important is the employer's role in an H-1B or L-1 visa application, and what should applicants ensure their employer provides to avoid delays or refusals?
Yeah, that's why we mentioned in the beginning that credibility of the employer is incredibly important. So we do have information if the employer has had fraudulent applications in the past or any issues. Perhaps they were trying to send employees to clients that did not expect them. We do have information such as that, or if they have faced an FDNS site visit and that site visit did not go well. So that's why I warn people and I say make sure that you are going to work for a credible employer. As for what they need to provide you, they need to provide you perfect grammar documents that you need, whether it's your job description, the product description, the end client letter. Those need to be provided to you, and if you've worked with them before and you're going for a renewal, they should also be paying you what they say they are going to be paying you and placing you where they say they're going to be placing you. So everything needs to be done ethically, because at any point when you go for a renewal, questions could come up about previous employment. So I think it's just a responsibility of the employer to act ethically and provide you the documentation that you need to communicate appropriately with the consular officer. If you're not clear about so if you're brand new and you're not clear about your job description, for example, they should be able to clearly communicate to you why you're a subject matter expert, why you're needed in the United States, for example, versus working remotely from India. So really, it's an important role, and you should be able as an employee to lean on your employer for that type of information.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Yvette, for taking that up and for, navigating us through, preparing us for a
Mhm.
bit more in a better way for H-1B and L-1 visas. Well, we have a lot of questions and participants asking, viewers out there asking in YouTube, especially, and also on Facebook. So I think we should take up Rag's question first. Rag is asking about blanket L1 at Chennai. Is often a refusal or a 221G. What is the likely reason?
So there is a higher level of scrutiny for those applications because they're not individual petitions. So the consular officer may really want to look at you as the applicant a little bit closer. So because it's not an individual petition and you were named under the umbrella of this big company, I want to make sure you do actually have that subject matter expertise, education. And so if you're not, maybe you are really answering questions concisely, but if it's not to the level that I want to see your transcripts, I want to see your grades, I would like to see what product you're working on, and just have more information just because it is easier to add you to that blanket petition than giving you your own individual petition. So the consular officer feels a little bit more of a sense of responsibility to scrutinize where you're going to be going and what you're going to be doing. So that could be a reason that they just, want to look at things a little bit more closely.
Absolutely. And Rag, if you have any further questions, or maybe you want a one-on-one discussion, a consultation with Udeti Visa, you can book a consultation, and do not forget to use this promo code that you can see on top of our screen. It's called IT People, and you will get a 15% off. Thank you so much. And definitely, if you want to contact Yvette Bansal, her contact details are on the screen. You can take note of it. 630-303-6165. That's a phone number. And you can email Yvette, yb@udetivisa.com, and go visit www.udetivisa.com to get to know more about Yvette Bansal and Udeti Visa, of course. Thank you. And now let's take up Ansar's question on YouTube. I am on H-1B and my company merged with another in July this year. My offer letter had the old name. Should I still take this document to my interview?
So, sure, you can. I would say who is named on your petition, who your end client is. So things should make sense. Your DS 160 should make sense with the offer letter with what you're explaining. If it makes more sense to get an updated letter with the new company name, because I can't see all your documents, then you may want to consider that, or you may want to get an updated letter and the old company name letter as well. It just depends on what the rest of your documents look like and who's your petitioner and client. I hope that makes sense.
Okay. I hope so too, Ansa. I hope you got your answer, and thank you for participating. Thank you, Yvette, for taking that up. Let's take up this one from Mayan Abu on Facebook. He's asking if the educational background is not according to the job in H-1B. So that's
That
that's it.
Yes, so that might be fine. The consular officer looks at the bigger picture. So if you're going for a well-known company, you're able to explain exactly your specialty occupation, but your educational background is slightly different. That might
Mhm.
be fine, especially if you've worked with that company before. Now, if it's a brand new company, you found them on LinkedIn, a recruiter recruited you, your educational background is completely different than what you're going to be doing, you don't have the proper work experience, and you can't discuss the tie, the consular officer may really question like what's going on with this petition. So it really depends. But if it's but but sometimes it's okay. For example, some people study mechanical engineering, but then they end up having a very niche subject matter expertise in business for a company in the United States. So, in most cases, I would say that this is fine, unless it's an outlier case that might be throwing some red flags.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you for taking that up for Mayan. And
Sure.
thank you, Mayan. Yeah, makes sense totally. And we have a follow up from Rag. So let's take that up. Third country nationals for L1 and H-1B, will this stand a chance currently?
I'm not sure what exactly the question is. If you can clarify, that would be great.
Yes, Rag. Please maybe rephrase what you want to know. We are here for some more time. Meanwhile, let's take up another question and let's take this one from Trisha. Trisha is asking, my L1 visa interview is next week. I'm worried about explaining my managerial role. How can I clearly demonstrate that my duties meet the L1A criteria for an executive position?
Right. So you can talk about how long you've been in that managerial role. You can talk about how many people you have supervised in the past, how many people you are going to supervise in the United States. If you have a high level of educational background, you can mention that. So essentially, can you tell me a little bit more about what makes you worried about explaining your managerial role? Is there something in particular that is causing you concern? Maybe then I can help you address it a little bit better.
Sure, Trisha, if you have anything, please, give us more details and maybe we can get you better answers. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you for taking that up. So next up, let's take this one from Pavan, the first question on our webinar today. Hello, I'm preparing my DS 160 for L1B renewal and have a question about the section on immediate relatives in the US. My wife and son, who are on L2B dependent visas, will be staying in the US while
Mhm.
I travel to India. Should I include them as immediate relatives in my response to that question?
Yes, I would include your wife and child. They're also your travel companions in a sense. So you should mention them on your DS 160. I don't know why are they not also renewing their visas, or maybe they came in after you. I think it's fine either way, whether you want to mention it or not, but you will get the question, are you married? Where's your child? Where is your wife? So if you want to add them on that section of immediate relatives, that's perfectly fine. So, yes.
Great. Thank you, Yvette. And thank you, Pavan, for your question. Now, next, let's take up this one from Shraddha. I have a quick question regarding the client letter for my upcoming interview. My name isn't mentioned in the letter, it only refers to me as the beneficiary. Will this be an issue for the interview process?
I think that that is a little bit of a concern. I'd like to see your name on a letter. I don't want a general letter, and I would go back to your employer and see if they can make it specific to you. I think all your documents should really be specific to you to avoid any 221G administrative processing delays. Because if I look at that, I might say, I really want an updated letter that mentions your name and not just beneficiary. And in fact, it could even be like a red flag. That's unusual.
So true. It just sounds so fishy already. Shraddha, well, thank you for your question and I hope you figure out. Well, Rag is back, so let's take up Rag's follow up, maybe with more clarification. He's here. L1 and H1B consular appointments at a third country when local consulates are unavailable. That's what he meant.
I think it should be fine. I mean, I haven't heard of any concerns regarding you taking your H-1B or L visa interview. If you depending on the country you go to, the consular officer may not really know much about H-1Bs and Ls because we process the most H-1Bs and Ls in India. However, if it's a nearby country, they're probably used to H's and L's going there, so probably somebody there will be able to effectively adjudicate your visa. It could go one or two ways. They can just try to get you out the door and say, "Okay, looks great. Here's your visa." Or the officer may slow down and say, "I want to look at everything," or "Please submit these documents." So it is a little bit concerning to go to a third country in case you face some of those delays, but in general, it shouldn't be an issue and it shouldn't really affect the outcome of your visa as long as your petition is good and your employer is fine, especially if you are going to a well-known company. I mean, I will definitely say if you are, say, an Amazon employee or a Tata, you are an Ernest and Young employee. I think that I would even be more comfortable to go to another country because at least a consular officer will have some name recognition. So I think it's fine, but there's always a chance a consular officer may want more information, and then having to deal with that in a third country may not be ideal. So, choose with caution.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Yvette, for taking that up. And Rag, I hope you have finally gotten your answer. And even if not, you can always have a one on one consultation. Why not make use of this promo code IT People for a 15% off with Yvette Bansal, Udeti Visa Expert. And definitely, you can even call Yvette on her number 630 303-6165, and you can email Yvette yb@udetivisa.com or go visit www.udetivisa.com. All right, Yvette, I had a few more questions from our comments and our Facebook pages, so I'm going to share my screen right now and we will take them up. So, okay, I'm ready with the first one if you are. This is a question from an anonymous participant asking in H-1B visa interview what we need to answer the question where you will be staying in the US.
Right. So where you're going to be staying is should be related to where you're going to be working. And in the day of remote work, you need to defend why you need to also be in the United States. So ensure that you can mention where your office location is and also communicate where you're going to be living. And all of that really needs to make sense to the consular officer. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that up, Yvette. And
Sure.
I have this next question. This is also from an anonymous participant asking Dropbox Chennai H1B date 26th September. I received a 221G due to having a similar colored shirt in my photographs as in my previous H1B renewal. Now my application is under administrative processing again. How long does it typically take for the Chennai consulate to approve the application and send the passport to the premium location service after the status changes to administrative processing?
No, that it really depends. If it's something like you need to resubmit a photo, it really shouldn't take more than a week and a half or so. That it seems like your issue is a quick fix, so it shouldn't take too long.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Yvette, for taking that up. I'll move on
Sure.
to this next one. This is also regarding H-1B interview. My H-1B interview, H4 as well, experienced on 21st October at Hyderabad Consulate. Interview slot 10:15 a.m. After the docs check and security check, reached the interview counter at 11:20 a.m. Okay, he's got the whole conversation. Let's see what his question is. Okay, so I think I'll have to say the whole thing. The status is approved on SIAC website, showed approved on the same day and issued on the next day. So please pass your passports. What will be your title at the company? Which state are you going to? And what is your package? Worked directly at the employer or at client site? Mine was direct. What is your highest qualification? Asked for fingerprint scan and kept the passport. Interview lasted for less than a minute. No documents asked, no questions asked for H4. Did see quite a few visa refusals too while I was in the queue. The guy in front of me at the counter got rejected as well. Not sure about the reason though.
Doesn't seem like there is a question, but they are definitely sharing the most common questions. I want to say we are doing this show, but H-1Bs were one of my favorite categories. And unless there was huge red flags, which only happened once in a while, maybe once every couple of days, most H-1B interviews are quite fast. I do tend to look at the end client letter. In his case, he was working directly for the company, so there was no end client letter to look at. If he was
Mhm.
working on a product or he was a subject matter expert, I would have asked him about his duties. And if everything looked great, it would have been very quick, and I would have wanted to move him very quickly out of my window. So I would say this is actually a very typical experience. And it's only when the petitioner is dicey or the way that the individual at the window is presenting, they can't describe their duties or they can't describe how they found the job. They're a first time H-1B applicant, never traveled outside of India before. This is where things get a little bit muddy. But especially if you are a returning F1 student, maybe you work for that company on OPT,
Mhm.
I think that most of the time people are going to have smooth sailing on their H-1B and L visa interviews. Sometimes, worst case, it's a 221G for something minor that resolves pretty quickly. I would say about 85% of H-1Bs and Ls are handled in this way. So I think the rest get a little bit unlucky with 221G, and then a small fraction, there is some serious fraud that's found. So I hope that is helpful. And thank you, Anonymous, for um, giving us that insight.
Absolutely. I think many people have this question, and thank you, Yvette, for highlighting that. It is pretty common. Thank you. All right, so going on to my next. This is from another anonymous participant. Hi everyone, can I make an H1 transfer from company A to B while my spouse's H4 change of status application F2 to H4 I-539 related to my company A is still pending? Please help.
I would contact one of them, like all the amazing immigration lawyers on this talk show. I would contact them for that specific question so that they could look into your case and make sure that everything is looking fine. It's not something I can answer right now. Yeah, it's a lot of information.
Thank you so much, Yvette, and for sure we will try to address this question and try to take it up and get an answer.
Perfect.
Thank you, Yvette. Let's go on to this next one. This is Hello All, another anonymous participant. Can I transfer H1B with three paychecks like below? First paycheck for October month and the other two paychecks for November, and it is bi-weekly. So my question is that can I make H1B transfer with paychecks like this? Like one monthly paycheck and two bi-weekly paychecks, which is different in frequency? Will it be an issue with my transfer application? And this is my first H1 transfer. Thanks in
Mm,
advance.
yeah, I don't know if it sounds like an administrative, like HR question more so than interview prep. So I'm not really sure how to answer that one. Maybe you can communicate with your employer. Yeah.
Sure, Yvette. Thank you so much for the advice. And yes. All right, let's move on now and let me try to get another question. Let's take up this one. This is about Dropbox appointment. Hello,
Mhm.
everyone. I was unable to book a December H1B Dropbox appointment in Chennai, India, so I opted for a direct interview in Hyderabad instead. What risks are involved, and will they ask additional questions. Has anyone gone through this process before? Also, my employer mentioned that an LCA is not required. Is that correct?
No, yeah. What a great question. Okay, so I'm going to try to answer this concisely. I always say if you can do Dropbox, like do it. Avoid those counselor officers like the plague. Don't go to the interview if you don't have to. So that's just my opinion because Dropbox is more streamlined. You The worst case that can happen is that you get called in for an interview. It sounds like you are in a hurry. If you're not in a hurry, I would say go for Dropbox. Always go for Dropbox. It's just A to B, a straight line, very quick and painless. If they have any additional questions, they can call you in for an interview. It usually doesn't happen for a renewal unless there's some red flag. So that's why I suggest it because it lowers the risk of you being called in for you being requested for 221G. Like for example, you go to Hyderabad and the officer wants to see your LCA. Some consular officers do want to see your LCA. It mentions where your work location is, what your salary is, and they really trust that document. So your employer is telling you you don't need it. I would say always carry it, always have a copy of it because what could happen is they could say, okay, you don't have it. I'm going to 221G you for it. That's probably the worst case scenario is that you're going to be stuck in administrative processing for a little bit longer. However, since you've worked for your employer before, it should be fine. So I hope that answers your question. Dropbox is the kind of most straightforward way. You should be fine if you go to Hyderabad. Just be prepared. Since you've already worked for that employer, have your W-2 or pay stubs in case they requested. Definitely have the documents that you need. And yes, I would definitely carry that LCA. So, but I will caveat this. I don't want to stress you out too much. I don't think it's a huge risk going to Hyderabad. It's just very minimal when you do Dropbox. So I don't want to freak you out when I say what I'm saying, right? I hope I'm being clear. So thanks.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you. That is really very kind of you. Let's go on to this next question now. This is also another Dropbox um, question. H-1B Dropbox experience and suggestions needed. I'm looking for
Okay.
insights from anyone on day one CPT. Should I take this very long?
Mm,
But there is a situation. So here's my situation. My first F1 visa expired last year. I transitioned to day one CPT and did not travel to India. I get did not travel to India to get a second F1 visa stamped. Recently, my H-1B was approved, and I'm now planning to travel to India for stamping. I've heard mixed things about the Dropbox option. It seems like only Chennai has open appointments, and other centers are either booked, and there is a higher rate of refusals for Dropbox applicants in Chennai. If anyone here is in a similar situation or has recently gone through the Dropbox process, I'd love to hear your experience. And what do you recommend, Dropbox or in person interview? Your advice would be much appreciated.
So in their case, since they've never had an H-1B visa before, I am not sure that they are eligible for their first H-1B stamping being Dropbox. So I don't think that you qualify. You need to be for Dropbox. You need to be renewing for the same visa category. So I don't think you'll have the option. So you'll probably need to definitely present at an interview. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for clearing that out and for clarifying. Thank you, Yvette, for taking that up. I'll go on to this next question now. Hello all. I have attended H-1B specialty visa on 4th April 2024. At the end of the interview with consular, gave me a 221G administrative processing letter and said to me, "Wait at least 2 weeks, you will receive an email and follow up the email." In white paper mentioned no documentation required. I have been waiting for almost 6 months now and I haven't received any email. I am actually uh, am I actually refused or still have a chance to get approved or rejected? Can someone help me about my situation? I have to take a decision about my career. Thank you. And this person has shared this also.
It sounds like the consular officer had some plan in mind when they had communicated this to this individual, since they didn't ask any information. Maybe that the consular officer had information of their own that they wanted to follow up on, and it could be a wide range of things. So I would definitely follow up, since you have follow up with that consulate or embassy and see what the status is of your application. There's always a chance for approval, even if it's 6 months. It could be that they're doing some past checks and your application got stuck somewhere. It could be a wide variety of things, but definitely there's still a chance that you can move your application along. Definitely follow up on it. And if your employer has a lawyer, definitely talk to your employer and see what your employer suggests, or if they could maybe write you a letter saying that you've been stuck in administrative processing and that you are needed at your employment site. And so maybe attaching that letter from your employer or from your employer's lawyer, as well as you communicating that you want to know the status, will help move your application along. But definitely don't sit on this. It's been pending far too long. So
Thank you, Yvette, for taking that up. All right, let's move on now to another question. This is also on Facebook. This one is also another anonymous participant. Does delay in I-129 petition approval mean that I'm more likely to get an RFE? It's been 80 days from my receipt date and it still shows that USCIS is reviewing my case. Has anyone got an approval after a long wait?
I can't answer that. That's more of a back end issue rather than a visa interview preparation.
True.
But I will go back to the previous applicant who's stuck in 221G processing. If you're stuck in 221G and you want to maybe get a little bit more insight on what's going on, you can book a consultation with me, and then perhaps I can tell you who to contact and how to craft an email, and perhaps what documents you should also include in that email, so I can help you get unstuck in 221G, or make some recommendations from my end, or based on the way that your interview went, I can give you some insight on what potentially went wrong. So may not be able to do this for everyone, but if you want to email me with your particular case, I can tell you whether or not I'd be able to help you or not. So that's for 221G, but in terms of the I-29, that is outside of my scope. So thank you.
But thank you so much, Yvette. Yes, and definitely. Also, when you book a consultation with Yvette, please do not forget to use this promo code IT People for a 15% off. Thank you, Yvette. So far, so good. We've been taking up so many questions. I think let's go for another 5 minutes if that's fine.
That's great. Yeah.
So, this is from Shruti asking, Hi, did anyone go to Tijuana, Mexico for an H-1B stamping recently? Indian nationals? Okay, this
I
is
think
very.
Dan has a really good contact for that specific
Well,
binge
Shruti,
watch.
yeah, sure. Thank you, Bet.
But I have
So,
heard if
sure.
Mexico, I have heard if Mexico is overwhelmed with their own applicants, they may not be opening up appointments. So I have heard that from a former consular officer that works for Udeti that's worked in Mexico. So that might not always be possible for people, to just FYI.
Thank you. Thank you, Yvette. Let's take up this next one. Hello, I am awaiting an H-1B approval from USCIS application submitted on June 28th, 2024, IOE. Status as of today, case is being actively reviewed by USCIS. As of July 1st, 2024, we are actively reviewing your Form I-129 petition for a non immigrant worker. Anyone else in the same boat? Any idea how long would it take? Thank you.
Yeah, that would time frame would vary. I'm sure maybe the people who are in the pipeline right now would give a better time frame than me.
Mhm. Okay, Bet. This is another question. Hi, we got H-1B stamped and want to come to US and apply SSN and come back immediately in 1 week because I am servicing notice period. We cannot stay more days in US. Can I apply SSN and come back to India in 1 week? Will that make any problem when I reach back again to USA?
So
Yeah.
they already got their H-1B stamping and they want to leave the country and come back and they applied for an SSS number in the meanwhile. I think that's fine. And there's no issue with that.
I think the only issue is he's serving his notice period. And is that going to be a problem?
So his H-1B is currently, so he does not have a current employer.
Maybe. Well,
I don't have enough information to guide you on this case. Unfortunately, I don't want to give you the wrong answer. Um, sorry
but
about
thank you,
that.
Ben. No worries. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for, taking so many questions from our end and also from these groups.
Yeah,
I think we're,
I
yeah,
just want to give you guys the best information, and sometimes in a comment and I can't see the whole thing, it's difficult to give you because it's such a big decision and could have consequences. So unless I'm 100% sure, I will say, reach out or book an appointment or, perhaps look into this a little bit further. So because it's really serious, immigration stuff is really not a joke.
true. And it makes sense because every case is different and it needs full attention and 100% to know all and be able to navigate what after, right, Yvette? So thank you so much for taking that up. And I think we will take up this comment on YouTube from Ayush now. It's asking, my spouse and I are applying for H-1B and H-4 visas together. Should we prepare differently than if we applied separately? And should we expect in a joint interview?
I think there does, so if you apply together, the H-1B is going to be asked those basic questions first. They're going to establish their subject matter expertise, their
Mhm.
tie with the petitioner, their job duties and responsibilities. Some documents may be requested or no documents may be requested. And once the consular officer is satisfied, they're going to turn to the H-4 and say, is that your wife? How did you meet her? When did you get married? Do you have your marriage certificate? If it's a recent marriage, perhaps they will look at marriage pictures or request marriage pictures. They may turn to your wife and ask your wife, or yes, like what, how, those same questions to your wife. They may want to hear from your wife. So that's how a joint interview goes. If she applies separately from you, make sure that you have your visa granted already before she ends up at the visa interview. They'll look up your case, they'll read quickly what company you're going for, how your interview went, and then proceed to ask her for the same exact thing: marriage certificate, how you met, how long you've been together, when is your marriage date, do you have any children. So whether together, it's going to look very similar.
Okay. Thank you so much, Yvette, for taking that up for Ayush. Well, we have another comment that came in just now. This is from Adne. What means your case no longer than accept your process? I don't know if I'm saying that right. What
I
does
don't
it
know.
mean if your case is no longer? I'm trying to reframe and trying to figure out. But Adne, if you can rephrase, what are you trying to ask? We would be really happy to help you. It's regarding I-130 petition, he says.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, it'll be really great if you can frame your question properly. Adne, we are here. You can take your time, take a minute, frame your question and tell us about it. But Yvette, since we're here and, our topic for today, how to prep for H-1B or L-1 visas, do you have any additional tips before we go for all the folks out there who are preparing for one?
No additional tips. Just make sure you articulate your job duties well enough and your relationship with any end client, and having that end client letter is going to be really important. Make sure that when you Google whatever work location, you tell your visa officer that that work location supports whatever work you say you're going to do. If it's a product based, the consular officer will Google it. They'll want to see what type of building it looks like, for example. So for those in smaller companies, just be aware. And also you can tell your employer, consular officers Google our building. Like if you have reviews, they may look at some of those reviews. And so to be aware of the online presence of your petitioner, and if there's any red flags online, maybe bringing them to the attention of your employer. For example, can we improve our Google reviews? It seems like a very small thing, but then leading on your employer for some of those documentation that you need. Like, for example, the we had the young lady who said that her document just said beneficiary. Make sure that you push your employer to give you pristine documents, looking over your documents, making sure there's no grammatical error, make sure there's no errors in where the location is. So you taking that responsibility and then going back to your employer and saying that this isn't right or this doesn't look right, that's going to go a long way in helping you prepare. And then for Trisha, who is worried about, your L1A managerial role, make sure, for that, you just have to explain that you were a manager. That's probably one of the most straightforward things. Talking about technical skill is a little bit more difficult, but as long as you can talk about how you were a manager, you pretty much check the box on that LA. So don't get too nervous about that in particular. So I hope that that is helpful for our viewers.
Definitely, very helpful. I mean, this whole session today was a great one. Yvette, very insightful, very enlightening, and very participative, I would say, because we had so many questions coming in from our audiences out there. So it was great taking up each one of them. And I was expecting Adne to come back with a proper question, and he's here. Oh, wow. Just as I was saying it. So he's saying, my I-130 petition estimate time is down 1 week to your case longer than expected. That is what he means. Or what does it mean? I'm so sorry, Adne. I shouldn't be laughing, but I'm not able to figure out what is your question. If you could just give us more clarification, as in what is it that you want to know, it'll be great. And please do not worry, even if this session has ended, this video is going to be there even after the stream has ended. So you can comment your questions and we will really address it for sure, even after the stream has ended. But thank you so much for participating. I wish I could give you an answer from Yvette. Right, Yvette? We are not able to figure out.
I have other H-1B videos on my Udeti Visa YouTube channel, so don't forget to subscribe. And on udetivisa.com, we have a couple of H-1B blogs, totally free blogs if you want to beef up on your reading for how to prepare. I would recommend those because they're written by former consular officers. So there's a lot of information out there, but I think those blogs are really good. So yeah, thank you so much again, Nipasa, for having me, and for all viewers who asked all these questions. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Yvette. Really, it was such a pleasure having you with us. And for all those of you tuning in, if you found today's session helpful, please don't also forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Immigration and Jobs Talk Show, so that you never miss out on any of our future webinars. Well, we look forward to seeing you again in our future episodes as well. And until next time, all of you folks, stay safe, take care, good luck with your visa journeys, and absolutely don't forget to check out www.udetivisa.com. And if you do book a consultation with Udeti Visa, please do not also forget to use this promo code for a 15% discount. And the promo code is IT People. And of course, you can contact Yvette Bansal, former US consular officer. You can call her on her number as well, 630-303-6165, and email Yvette, yb at udetivisa.com and go visit www.udetivisa.com to get to know more about Yvette Bansal. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day ahead and stay tuned to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Bye. Bye.